Sicha this week, Parshas Devarim. The second Sicha is interesting because there is a similar Sicha, obviously, in the later Chalokim. And there the Rebbe speaks. That is not a Sicha of Parshas Devarim, Sicha Shchei Shvat. The ideas are similar. However, we'll start off with this one, go to that one, and then expand a little bit on it. So the evidence that takes issue with trying to understand the concept of, we find in Chazal the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote Mishneh Torah, as we know, and it says there a difference between Mishneh Torah and the rest of the Torah. The rest of the Torah, Moshe Pi Agvura Amra, and here it's Moshe Pi Atzma. Now, Chas v'Shalom obviously doesn't mean that Moshe wrote it on his own. He made his own. It means that he did it with Ruach HaKodesh. If he did it with Ruach HaKodesh, what difference does it make? What's the difference between the first four Svarim and Mishneh Torah? Question number one. Second one, what was it necessary? It also says that Moshe made a chazara. Mishneh Torah is, as we know, a chazara for the whole Torah. Why did he do that? Why do you have to do it on his own words? Piatzma. What is that constant piatzma? So the Rebbe explains we say there's the difference between the fourth Svarim and the fifth Sefer. The fourth Svarim, there's two ways that something is transmitted. There is one where the transmission. First of all, I'm sorry. First, we have to realize that Torah is Apayim Shana Kodma L'Olam means the Torah precedes the world 2,000 years. Doesn't mean actual year. That doesn't mean 2,000. Doesn't mean just simple time frame. It's a different level. Torah is beyond the world. Beyond the world. Chiddush of Matan Torah is the way it comes into the world. But the world, Torah coming into the world through a person like Moshe, and it's necessary to come through Moshe. Because in order to take something that's beyond something else and bring it to something that's totally not relatable on the surface, it has to come through a source that has both the beyond and the world. And that is Moshe. So Moshe is sort of the memutza, the intermediary to bring this Torah that is, out of our range into our world. And in that, there are two ways that memutza works, the intermediary works. One, as a conduit. He's a conduit. There are many conduits that exist in the world that we can all relate to. And they don't have anything really to do except they are the means by which the one item is brought, or something is brought to a different place. That's a conduit. And then there's a different concept that it's not a conduit. He becomes the source for the lower level. It internalizes it. He internalizes it and brings it over to the next level. Obviously, there are differences in each. In the level where you can do it, it remains beyond. It just gives us the opportunity to relate to beyond. But we can't really unite with it. We can't really, we can't make it part of ourselves. We can't integrate it into our lives in the way that we can actually experience it at that level of what it is. But by coming in a manner where Moshe Rabbeinu himself internalized and became part of him, And he's giving it over. So now we have a whole different connection to Torah than we had before. Now, really, he only gave over only Mishneh Torah, which is the verb. But since he reviewed the Torah, so he gave us an ability to connect to the whole Torah in that manner. That's the kuda of the Sicha. Very, very much so a beautiful idea in understanding. Now, in the Sicha of Rosh Chodesh Shvat, that the Rebbe, Sicha Rosh Chodesh Shvat, which is in Chelek Lamed Vov. So there, the Rebbe tells us, take the same idea and he just moves it even further. He says that by Moshe Rabbeinu taking the Mishnah, writing Mishneh Torah, he gives us the ability to learn, to actually not only know Torah Sheba'al Peh, but I'm saying not only to know Torah, right, Torah, but to actually improvise and to be mechadish and to be involved in Torah Sheba'al Peh, because it's now brought down to human seichel, to the ability that a human mind can now grasp Torah and be involved in Torah, be mechadish in Torah, and that all comes from Mishneh Torah. That all comes from Mishneh Torah. And that's what Moshe's Hayil Moshe bears HaTorah. That's in this week's Parsha. And not only that, he did it with Shivim Lashon. So he says that gave it a human ability in Torah, a human input in Torah. And therefore you can use it and you can learn Torah through actually using your seichel and being involved and creating and analyzing and so forth. And it becomes part of Torah Hashem. So when we, using obviously the guidelines of Torah, you can't just come along and say whatever you want. It became our Torah now. And therefore, we can now learn Torah in a whole different way. We can be mechadish in Torah, we can add Torah. That's the step in Chelek Lamed Vav that the Rebbe has. Well, just show you an interesting point that may be explained based on the Rebbe's approach. There is a Gemara in Baba Basra. A few weeks ago, we read the story of Bilaam. We all know that Bilaam is in the way the Torah portrays him, is a lowlife. Totally about himself, totally self-centered, nothing to do with any other interest than his honor, his money. And yet the Torah writes a whole parsha about Bilaam. But the Gemara Baba Basra uses a phrase. It says, Moshe wrote Sifrei uParshas Bilaam. Moshe wrote his Sefer and Parshas Bilaam. What does that mean? So the Shalach Kodesh has. What are you talking about? Of course it says. A lot of people ask, but the way he presents it, his wording is very strong. Of course, Moshe wrote his Sefer. Moshe has to write his Sefer. It's all from Moshe. It's all Moshe from the Eibishter. So what is he referring to? And as a Chiddush that Moshe wrote Parshas Bilaam, I mean, there's a word in the Torah that's not part of Torah. So Rashi used an interesting word. Rashi says the Nuvuah and the Mishalim that doesn't fit. That's not for Moshe's purpose. I mean, it's Moshe, but Terosim say the Meisim. It's not his. It's not his narrative that he deals with. So what's going on here? And Cain and Hevel are, and the Para is. Everything that there is Moshe's narrative, so that's what Moshe is writing. Whatever's Torah is Torah. That's Torah. So what did he wrote Parshas Bilaam? I'm just going to tell you a couple interesting things before we get to the part that negate to us, and that is as follows: that when Moshe wrote. The Ritva says Parshas Bilaam doesn't mean what we have in the Torah. There was a sefer that was written much more in depth and much longer. I guess it had more chapters or whatever, and it was something that was available to the Yidden. The Yidden had it for many years. They had it, and that is what Moshe wrote when it says in Parshas Bilaam. Chiddush Pella. A lot of different answers, but I want to tell you Yerushalmi. Pella Dik Yerushalmi. This is where I want to get. Zog the Yerushalmi. Moshe Kosav Chamisha Sifrei Torah. V'chozav v'kosav Parshas Bilaam. What does that mean? He wrote the 5 Sefer Torah, and then he wrote Zog the Maraponim. The Maraponim is a Pirush on Yerushalmi, is a commentator on Yerushalmi, writes, Kloimar, this means, he wrote from Bereshis till Einei Kol Yisrael, or according to some opinions, till Vayomas Moshe. Everything. He went back and he wrote Parshas Bilaam. What in the world is going on over there? First of all, who cares? Cares the order that he wrote. There's a sefer, Anaf Yosef, that wants to explain the Gemara, Parshas Bilaam. He doesn't bring this Yerushalmi, but he says, oh, I'm sorry. Is that no. I'm sorry. That's a different chapter. He says like this is the Ian Yankiv, Sefer Ian Yankiv on the Ein Yankiv. The Ein Yankiv is on the Sefer on the Haggadah's Chazal, all the Haggadahs, all the different Drush stories of Chazal. It's like a separate Sefer of just taking out those parts, not the halachic parts. And on that, there's a Sefer in Yankiv written from somebody quite a few hundred years ago. And he says, he explains Rashi, he says, that literally uses the words of the Rebbe. It brings that Torah is Kodma Alpayim Shana to the world. Then, when you finish Parshas Midbar, Eila Mitzvah Mishmatar Zir Hashem Yad Moshe. Finish. This is the Eibishter. Mishneh Torah, on the other hand, is Eila Dvar Moshe Moshe. As we said, these are Moshe's words. He says, Parshas Bilaam, even though it's in the first 4 parts, which is the Eila Dvar Moshe Hashem, it's a part of the Eibishter's written Torah, not Moshe's part of Torah. Nicht Moshe. It was written through Moshe. Since he was from the Nevi'ah, it wasn't written by the Eibishter. In other words, both the Yerushalmi, and this fits very well, this approach to the Yerushalmi. It is Mishneh Torah in Sefer Bamidbar. There's a Mishneh Torah, a separate Chelek Torah, and there's a Mishneh Torah in Sefer Bamidbar. That's what the Iyun Yanka says. Now, with the Yerushalmi, it means basically, literally, it's after Mishneh Torah. It was inserted in Bamidbar after Mishneh Torah. That's what Yerushalmi says. obviously, the question is, who cares? What difference does it make when and how? There's a bottom line, it's Torah. It's Torah. I'm not, I just want to add that I believe that with this Sicha that we discussed, both Sicha, Sai, Chelek Yitches, and Sai, Chelek Lamed Vod, according to these pshatim could be, but there is still missing. The Rebbe says the Chazar Kol HaTorah, but it's only Chazar, but the Torah is still Torah. Again, the Chazar gives you a koyach, but could be that koyach is even enhanced way stronger by Moshe inserting a part of Torah, the Mishneh Torah, the part that's the slavish in him, the part that he internalized, and that part that's Seichel Odom, as he says in Chelek Lamed Vav, takes that and puts it into the first four Chumash. That was by inserting Parshas Bilaam and by writing Parshas Bilaam, Moshe Rabbeinu has now taken that even in the four parts that are Mipi Agvura, there's already the energy and the power and the ability for us to learn on a level of a Ben Adam. Not that it would have lacked. It could be there would be some lack in the fact that it's only a separate chumash. So Moshe went put it into that chumash, and now we have turned everything, not only the chazar of the Torah, but the actual Torah itself is something that we have a connection to, and on the level of slapshus, on the internalizing, and on the level of Torah Shapeh, of being able to chadish. Anyway, I think it's beautiful. This Yishalmi and this Ian Yankiv based on these Sichas of the Rebbe. Sei gesund, Tag.